Hey everybody, welcome to Terminus Live. I'm Corey.
And I'm a little teapot, short and stout.
Otherwise known as...
What?
That's Dylan.
I'm Dylan.
And today we have...
Monster Midian Crosby with Monster Makeup FX. Special effects makeup for television, TV, and movies.
Cool.
Playing a video game.
We're going back to the classic.
Yeah, good
That's
old Tetris.
The best Soviet gaming money can buy.
Oh, you can't stick it.
Oh, you have to like wait till it gets low and then...
Oh.
Tricky.
Oh, fast.
So how are you doing tonight, Midian?
I'm doing awesome. It's a pleasure to meet you guys and be playing some games here at the Terminus Live event.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you.
So your company's Monster Makeup
Oh yeah,
FX.
we got these fancy brochures from you.
She came prepared. I didn't even have to do any research. I can just read from this thing the whole time.
That's right.
But you do special effects and makeup, a lot of really cool special effects, not just gory stuff, but monster heads. I don't know if you can see this stuff, but you can go to her.
We can't, but that's okay.
You can go to her website, check it out.
MonsterMakeupFX.com.
You have worked. I was looking at your filmography earlier today. You've worked on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, over 30 feature films, numerous television shows, music videos, commercials. Live events, haunted houses, all the things that need makeup effects.
Yeah.
See, I didn't see the haunted houses stuff. What haunted houses have you done? Or is that?
It's kind of haunted houses tend to be one of those things that you kind of do, preferably at the beginning of your career, because unfortunately haunts don't have usually a very big budget. Now you guys here in Atlanta have one of the best haunted houses in the industry. And
Netherworld?
Yeah. And that blew my mind. I have never been to a haunted house like that before, and I probably will never see another haunted house that's like that again, because it is unreal.
Actually, I've never been. I didn't know that it was like one of the best ones. I didn't know it was like the creme de la creme of haunted houses.
It's pretty good.
It's the best one I've ever been to.
Really?
And I've worked at haunts and have been to haunts. And part of the problem is that I just don't get scared by anything anymore.
Right.
So it's really hard to understand, or to be in a conga line of people and just be like, all right, you're gonna scare me. You kind of see it coming from a mile away.
Yeah.
But at Netherworld, it was like total sensory overload.
Wow.
And I actually had a mechanical beast eat me. Like, it actually had its arms around me, and I was like, what?
I'm glad you're okay.
It was amazing. I was actually screaming, it's eating me! It's eating me! The whole time, because it was amazing.
Like a happy scream.
Oh, it was fantastic. I was thrilled.
Have you been to a Guar show?
I have, actually. Here's a little known fact, I did a little bit of work for a Guar show years ago when I was first starting in makeup effects. I was working, I did some like hair work on some tiny skulls that they had on their mic stands when I worked in Pittsburgh. So, yeah, that's the thing.
So I noticed you worked on Captain Fantastic.
Did.
I love that movie.
It's awesome.
How was that?
That was really cool. I got a call from the producer on that, and they had an effect that they'd called a couple of people on that were just unsure of how to make happen. And I just happened to be the person that was like, yeah, we can make that happen. And a lot of special effects is doing something that you've never done before, being willing to do something you've never done before, and having an idea of how to create something from nothing. And so that's kind of what we did. We worked, so the opening effect, where the
Spoilers.
opening 5 minutes of the movie, one of the kids has to kill a deer. So they needed the blood effects for that deer. And we ended up working with a bunch of roadkill deer and trying to figure out the best way to kind of create that effect. And we ultimately went with some skin from one of the roadkill deer along with a taxidermy deer.
I would
with
have
some blood
thinking it would
effects
just be like
underneath
some latex fur or something, but no, you found it. You found a dead deer.
Yep, we used the real thing.
Was it like tanned, or was the skin tanned, or just you
just
I
literally scraped it?
I salted it.
Oh,
okay.
and prepped it that way. And I think I used some bleach and different things to kind of clean it enough for this. But they did want to like screw some antlers into the dead deer's head and other stuff that, you know, just being in general part of one of the things we have to do as an effects artist is know when things are not safe. And drilling into a deer's head, possibly exposing people to mad cow disease, which is a deer-borne thing as well. I didn't recommend that.
Right.
So we didn't go with that. So
that's
instead,
a really good scene, though.
it worked.
Good work.
And you know what
Yeah.
the crazy thing is we did this at work, and we didn't know until we saw it in the theater whether or not they'd even used the footage.
Right.
Because I hadn't talked to them, we just kind of moved on with our life, and I actually got to see Captain Fantastic live in a theater. Whoop.
Oh.
Do I pass this on?
Yeah, you can pass it off if you want.
Yeah, I'll do that while you're...
Got to see it on my birthday 2 years ago. And my husband and I were like holding each other's hands, like watching the screen, not knowing. And then we were like, it was so exciting because we got to like not only, yes, they used it, but it also looked great. And that was like the best birthday present I could possibly imagine, is being able to see a film that I worked on in the theater with an effect that worked great. So that was pretty cool.
Do you have any others like that kind of stand out that you've done, either recently or not recently, or?
Well, my favorite film that I've worked on, I keep going back to motivational growth because it's well written. It's really clever. I like things that are a little different, but keep people entertained. I like a cult feel without like a lot of exploitation, and so I like clever.
Just the right amount of exploitation.
Just the right amount, exactly, and just having a lot of fun. And so I got to puppeteer on that film. I got to do the hair and the makeup and work on the effects team. I'm kind of one of these people, like, I want it all. And so I try and I overwhelm myself with a lot of tasks on films because I don't like that downtime. A lot of film is hurry up and wait, and I'm not a big fan of the wait part. So I tend to kind of overburden myself with a lot of different things to do on set, and manage to be that hair, makeup, and costume designer, or prop maker and effects artist, and just kind of be whatever I can be for that film. Especially when I could really get on board with a film. I want to kind of give a piece of me. I give a piece of me to every film. So it's got to be good enough.
So what is it was motivational growth.
Yes.
And there's something about a mold monster in that one. I don't actually know. So what, like, could you give a synopsis of the film?
So
or
it's set in the 90s.
The
It's
90s.
about this character, Ian B. Folliver, who has reclused himself into his apartment for 18 months. And he's decided to stop brushing his teeth.
We've all been there.
Stop bathing, stop washing his clothes, stop doing the dishes. So it's absolutely a disgusting, filthy mess. And the only thing he has left is his television, whom he's named Kent. And then one day Kent dies.
Oh.
And it kind of changes his world. He's got to kind of reach out and look for a TV repairman. He's got to try and find something else. And ultimately, he decides to kill himself, and he fails. And that's when the mold in his bathroom starts talking to him. So there's a lot more to it. If you look into the film, you can kind of get different meanings, and that's one thing that I really love about clever films, is that you don't just have one straight message, that there's something more that you can take out of it, and be an oddball and be entertained at the same time. So that's a fun film. Got to work with another effects company called Tolan Effects.
Tolan?
On that, yes. Based out of Pittsburgh, which is where I went to school.
And you puppetered on that one. I think you might have mentioned that.
Yeah, puppeteer. I was one of 3 puppeteers that did a 12-mechanism mold puppet, voiced by Jeffrey Combs from Reanimator series.
Nice.
So, funny story. We were actually talking about this earlier. I said I was going to mention it. Joe Dante. We went and saw the Telluride. No, it was the Stanley Film Festival a couple of years ago in Estes Park, Colorado. My husband and I got to go see Gremlins on the big screen with Joe Dante in attendance.
Oh, nice.
And Joe Dante also did Reanimator. And so it was really cool. At the end, we were kind of discussing a little bit about Jeffrey Combs, and I was mentioning that he plays this mold character, and just offhand I said, "Oh yeah, he's a fun guy." And Joe Dante started laughing. My husband started laughing, and I wondered why. And here we are talking about mold, and I said fun guy, and yeah. So these things just kind of happen.
Nice.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm a dork and I don't even know it.
Speaking of being a dork, I see you did a movie with Kevin Bacon called Cop Car. Does that mean you're 1 degree separation of Kevin Bacon?
I believe so. Yeah, I think there's no closer than 1.
So now I'm 2 degrees.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm like, wow, I'm like close to like a Kevin Bacon node. That's
Yeah.
that's cool.
And there's a
Actually,
TED
clever.
Talk or something out there about Kevin Bacon and the 1 degree, or the 10 degrees.
Isn't it 6 degrees? Yeah.
And originally he was really like offended by it and upset by it, and eventually he had to kind of like come to grips with it. And it's really interesting. So, but he's a really nice guy. It's what's really kind of blown my mind about working in film and television is how many of the people that are really big that are just really chill. They're such good, well-balanced people. By the time they get that big, they have kind of like lost that craziness. I think some people in the entertainment industry get a little bit crazy.
No.
Just a little. And so some of the struggling artists, or the ones that actually, I find that the ones that are at the bottom are really nice. The ones that are kind of in the middle tend to be a little bit more dickish. And then the ones at the top are most of the times just wonderful people. And so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's probably insecurity.
Definitely.
People in the middle, like, know it could be taken away at any time.
Rampant insecurity amongst all of us, between artists, and creators alike. It is definitely one of the bigger things that you have to deal with is egos and insecurities, and I think that's one of the things that being a woman kind of helps with a lot, because we tend to be a little bit more empathetic, and so I can really see where somebody's coming from when a producer's flying off the handle or they're doing something kind of crazy. I can just kind of like step back and understand, like, okay, well, this is probably happening and this is what's going through their mind, and you can just be a little bit more empathetic towards somebody who's kind of off the rails a little bit. So that helps in this.
So you do a lot. So it's not just, what I'm kind of impressed by your portfolio is it's not just like the gore stuff and like the bleeding and all that stuff. You do like a lot of like monster stuff, like kind of like what do you call it, like prosthetic kind of stuff. So like what kind of like monsters have you done? I see like there's like some blue demons in here, and I like your bird mask too. The bird masks are great.
The bird mask was for a whiskey company
cool.
called Famous Grouse for a commercial campaign last year. We made a bunch of those. The blue guy is, we did a friend of ours, it was one of our first cosplay things, kind of roaming in the realm of cosplay in Denver Comic Con.
I thought I saw like a Thanos you had.
We have a Thanos, yep.
Yeah.
Turned my husband into Thanos. That was pretty hot.
Oh.
But we did, the blue guy is actually, do you remember the cartoon Gargoyles?
Oh yeah.
We did Goliath from Gargoyles.
Oh yeah, the like main.
And it was just absolutely by chance that 2 weeks before the con, they announced that they were going to have a 20th reunion for the Gargoyles folks. And so we already had the prosthetics made and everything else, and we went to the panel event for that, and they called us backstage, and Marina Sirtis just freaked out. She absolutely loved our character.
Excuse me, Jonathan Frakes. I think he was the one that played that character.
Yep, he was there, and
oh no. You got a new record though.
Thank you.
and The best part though was that the animator himself said I got the color like just right, because you see in a lot of things
That's
it's either kind of gray or kind of
compliment.
blue, and it was just like the first time we did it, he was a little too I think blue, and I toned it down for the second one, and that's a lot of it is just kind of working with color and such. So yeah, so prosthetics are my specialty. That kind of seemed to kind of happen by the wayside. It incorporates all the things that I love to sculpt and mold and cast in different products and apply. So I like to kind of take it through that whole process. But being on set and applying is probably my favorite part. Although it's hard to choose. That's one of the great things about owning a company is that I can take the process all the way through and pick the parts that I want to work on.
Could you walk us through the process a little bit? Like, so you sculpt it, so a lot of it involves like sculpting it beforehand and then applying it to the artist and stuff?
Well, it all starts with a budget, right?
Of course.
So, you know, you talk to the filmmaker and find out, you know, how much time, how much money. And that's really dictates what we can do. And then part of being a special effects artist is figuring out the right way for that time and budget to complete the task, because you can probably do it like 10 different ways, at least, with different materials, with different techniques, with different crews, with different manners. And it's ultimately, when you're working with a lot with the independent scene, it's ultimately how can I get good, fast, and cheap? And that's a tough one. But we've kind of found a way to do as much pre-made stuff as possible. If something doesn't exist already that's quality work enough, then we have to make it. And then, so if we determine that we have to make something, the process next is to figure out what the right material is. There are latex, which is kind of like the massive amounts of anything from the 80s. You're going to see a lot of latex. Foam latex is kind of the next step up from that. It takes a little more time to make it, but you can make bigger things, so Pumpkinhead and things like that. Those are all like the Alien. A lot of those are made with foam latex because you can make it bigger and it's still lightweight. But a lot of the more subtle effects, like you see in that Darkest Hour that's out right now with Gary Oldman, all those are prosthetics made out of silicone. Okay. And one of the great things about silicone is it has a translucency that latex doesn't have. And that translucency mimics skin. And because of that, it looks more realistic.
Or see-through.
Or see-through, exactly. So
that's the hard thing, and like, because I do like a little bit of modeling and stuff, and the hard, like they call it subsurface scattering, I think.
3D modeling.
Yeah. I can't work. I need an undo button. I don't have for everything I do. But yeah, it's so hard to nail that digitally. But that's interesting. So you said silicone kind of mimics that.
Yeah.
Well, similar, isn't it similar? Isn't that similar to carbon silicon? I don't know.
Well, it's under it on the
It's
periodic
got the same
periodic
amount of electrons or something.
Yeah.
Now I'm just talking out of my butt.
It definitely, being a special effects artist is like a little bit mad scientist, a little bit kind of chemist, a little bit of a what is it, like bartender? What is it like?
Mixologist.
Or kind of like. But what does a bartender do with a client?
Oh,
like a therapist,
yeah,
kind of like partially that,
counselor.
because having somebody in your chair, especially that is getting ready to go become a character. Your part of getting them ready is to first of all give them the space, give them the confidence, and give them the comfort to slip into that role. And there's a fine line between being nice and wanting to talk to somebody,
right,
and being quiet and allowing them to have the space to become what they need to do and to focus on what they need to do. A lot of artists, just want to talk and fill the space with stuff about them, and it can kind of be. I'm a little bit. That's kind of why I like film more than I've applied to try and be like a Mac artist and stuff like that, where you're having to sell the whole time you're doing your makeup, and that's not really me. Like, it's just like I'm focusing on my art, and I let them focus on their thing. And I like a little bit of calm and quiet. Not total quiet, but you know, in the makeup room, I think it should be a safe place for my actors.
Oh no.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What has there been any like project that you really enjoyed working on, where you feel like that process really was nailed?
Boy, a lot of them, I'd say, but you know, fortunately, I have had a fantastic experience with so many of the projects that I worked on. But a great combination of a wonderful production team, along with fantastic actors, and it was probably The Frame. And that's one of my favorite directors. It's his it's a husband and wife team too, which I think is really cool. That's, you know, what Monster Makeup Effects is my husband and I. And you really kind of need somebody that is there with you that you can totally trust. And I get that. And so this is like a husband director and a wife producer. She does a lot of, she's a lawyer as well, so she can help with a lot of the paperwork. Exactly. But really clever and different kind of sci-fi fantasy stuff. So he did a film a couple years back that got a lot of attention, and that was called Ink. And that was just as I got back to Colorado. And that's like the storytellers give us our dreams, and then the incubus give us our nightmares. And it's about a wannabe incubus who steals a child, and the storytellers go after him to save her. And ultimately, like, if you told somebody it was the story, kind of a modern fable about a man reconnecting with his daughter, it would sound really boring.
Yeah.
But it's so not, and it's so different, and it's so beautiful. And I fell in love with this director after actually seeing a short film that they made called Spin, that is about a DJ that can kind of control the real world around him. And I thought that was brilliant. And so getting to work with Jamin and Kiowa Winans is probably a highlight of my career, because I got to work on their next film, which was The Frame, which is a brilliant kind of sci-fi, mind-bending, genre-bending film. And I got to do some really subtle effects. And that's my other favorite part. You know, as an effects artist, you want to do two things. You want to blow people's minds, and you want to do a really good job so that nobody knows. And so those are two aspects of special effects makeup that kind of contradict themselves. Like even today with like the Winston Churchill thing and Shape of Water and other things, people just are doing such a good job with some of these effects that they're not getting the notice that they probably should, because people don't even recognize them as being effects, because they're just so good. And that's kind of great. And that's me being really proud of our industry and what we bring to it. And any time that we can kind of do something that is practical, which means in camera as opposed to totally digital, or kind of letting the CGI artists take over, makes me happy, because I'd like to see more practical effects. Because I think a lot of it is a lot of directors and such don't believe that something can be done practically, and sometimes that's wrong. Sometimes it can be, you just don't have the right people to ask or check with. And that's one of the things that's great about John Watts, who did Cop Car, and he actually just did the new Spider-Man movie.
Oh, nice.
And it's just kind of like bringing a little bit more of an idea of that you can kind of have a story, and you don't have to like just fill it with CGI to excite people.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
I'm a bit bad in that, like, most of the movies I actually go to see like the spectacle ones.
Oh, you're bad.
I know.
Yeah, that was my husband too. Honestly, but when we first met, he actually didn't have the guts to tell me that he didn't like Blade Runner until after we were married. and then he since has been able to. I know, right? Like that's kind of a serious issue. That's like my top 3.
What did you think of the new one?
I found it really disappointing.
Really?
I found it almost devoid of everything that made the first one good. Like the fullness of the first one, the visual like spectacle of all this stuff that is everywhere, and the fact that you have this dichotomy of robots that are emotional that aren't supposed to be. I felt that the second one had no emotion. It was basically a robot that was like supposedly sort of showing emotion, but not really. And I didn't feel anything for him, and it's just like the whole robot girlfriend thing again. Like, a robot having a girlfriend, having a, it
was a hologram girlfriend.
Yeah, and it just didn't.
It was a ripoff of her.
Yeah, it really was, and I just didn't find it interesting at all. I really tried to kind of enjoy it, but ultimately I found it totally forgettable. The cinematography was pretty, and I find that in a lot of films these days. I'll find it pretty, but vapid. That there just isn't the emotion and the connection. One thing I did really like recently was Get Out. I thought Get Out was brilliant. And so I really want something that kind of moves me. I feel like as a filmmaker, as an effects artist, I want to see something that kind of connects, that stays with an audience. I'm a Lynch fan. I'm a Cronenberg fan. I want something that just like somebody, their skin is still crawling and they're dreaming about it.
The great thing about
for days later.
The great thing about both those directors is like, love them or hate them, you will not forget
That's
movie.
Right.
Did you see? It was a bit obscure. It was Valhalla Rising.
I think I did.
I just remember there were some really I'm pretty sure it was practical effects that involving. I don't even want to give it away, but it's Vikings. Use your imagination. They stick each other with pointy bits, and and stuff comes out.
Right. Stuff.
Raspberry jam.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting thing. There are PG-13 blood colors.
Really?
Generally, it's a little bit darker. So if it's PG-13, it'll be a darker red, rather than brighter stuff, which ultimately ultimately people more. Like you'll get a bigger stir out of somebody if they see bright red.
I mean, that's probably not It's probably not anatomically any more correct.
Well, usually when it first comes out, it's very bright.
Okay.
That does make a difference. Lung blood is a little foamy and kind of bright.
Right.
So there really are a lot of different bloods. So oftentimes I'll have like 6 or 7 different blood colors and types on set with me. So
do you actually like research? Do you actually use like paramedic photos or anything like that for research?
I do. Not just Google, but I've used some really awful websites for my reference over the years. I have one. Yeah.
I wonder if that's still a thing. I kind of hope not.
There are some really bad things that I've seen. In fact, recently we did a machete attack at the airport, and a friend of mine sent me a reel happened just outside of his place in China while he was working there. A true machete attack, like this dude just like sitting on the curb of the street, bleeding out. With this horrible machete wounds all over him, and you think, why aren't people helping him? There is nothing that you can do for this guy. Seriously,
point.
He's got like half of his neck is just like severed, and you're
Pez
30
dispenser.
seconds to 4 minutes away from dying. There's nothing you can do, and those are the sort of things that do kind of haunt me a little bit.
Can't unsee it.
You can't. It's part of life, and that kind of brings me to the first thing that I thought I was going to be as a kid. Was a nature show host. Because I loved nature shows.
It's not too late.
And I thought the people talking were the people there watching it.
Oh, right.
And so I thought that was part of the thing, is they were sitting there, oh, this is happening,
David
right?
David
Attenborough.
Attenborough.
Right, right there. And
It's under the ocean right now.
I don't know if you want
With
to
dolphins.
have a go.
Sure.
But there was, and some viewers might actually know this particular episode of this mountain lion that gets, or not mountain lion, tiger, lioness that gets bit by a snake, a poisonous snake, and she's got like a baby or something, and she like almost dies. And luckily she makes it, but you know, it's animals. They often don't. And that was part of my thing, is like, why aren't they helping me? And so that was actually a moment in my childhood where I realized I couldn't do that, because there was nothing I could do. I couldn't just watch an animal suffer and not step in. So human suffering, I don't know. We kind of cause so much of it that it doesn't. I mean, of course it bothers me, but it doesn't bother me as much as animals.
I'm the same way.
That's interesting.
And so, you know, we kind of glorify it a lot in our society. So violence is one of those things that just kind of, you do have to kind of disassociate it from it a little bit as an effects artist, and look at the anatomy and the beauty of just bodies and the weirdness of bodies. You know, being a Cronenberg fan, one of the things I do love is just kind of the horrors of the body itself. Like, the body does weird stuff.
That it does.
And it's kind of horrifying. You know, look at just children. They're absolutely the little parasites that just kind of like
Always sick.
yeah,
Always.
right. Just fluids and the whole pregnancy thing and all that is just kind of like one of those things that just I don't have kids, if you can guess, that just kind of always left that to my siblings, because I just I find it kind of that's the most terrifying thing, is just our bodies and what's happening all the time in them. I've been to the Muir Museum in
I love the Muir Museum.
yes, things that people have taken out of
so
stomachs, growths of horns, and you know, my mom has had, like, you know, spurs in her feet, and just the things that can just spontaneously grow on a body.
The
It's
ones
just-
that, I mean, this is external thing, but the ones that always got me were bot flies.
yes,
Oh,
yes.
oh.
So we are developing because the thing of my nightmares, the things that I have nightmares about,
Or just the effects artists
are
have nightmares
literally worms in my body.
Oh,
Like,
have you been to the Carter Center?
no.
There's, I don't know if that's like a traveling thing, but it talks about guinea worms and things that like Jimmy Carter had to help kind of eradicate, and those are terrible.
Look,
There's,
if
like,
you want to see something awful, look up mango worms in dogs.
oh no.
I don't think I
Can
would.
never unsee this. We've actually been doing research for a film that we're developing right now, and it's literally the stuff that I feel like I have to go back to this stuff over and over again. It's always parasites. It's things coming out of the body. It's changing the body. It's like, you know, making all kinds of parasite things. That's definitely what freaks me out. So.
Have you ever been freaked out by any of your own work before? Like, have you ever done something?
If it's really good and I've done it, I usually get excited.
Ah. I guess
Now-
at that point you know the trick, so it's like,
Yeah, it'd be weird if you were working on it and you step back and you're like, whoa.
I had a director forget to call cut because he was waiting to see what would happen next. That was a really big compliment.
In what context? What?
It was kind of a parasitic alien kind of thing. You know, guy wakes up in a bathtub full of ice, and he has a recent wound
that old
that's
story.
been stapled up. But they didn't take something out. They put something in,
Oh, no.
and then it comes out.
No.
So that was that moment. You know, we were just all waiting, and I just kept going and going with the little puppet creature, and finally he was like, "Oh, well, God, I forgot." Like, 'cause he was just so engrossed in it, and that was probably one of the best shoots I've ever had. And then we followed that up with another film that has some of my favorite anatomical and gory effects, and that was called Eat. And it's about a girl that finds herself and then eats herself.
Oh no.
It starts with a hangnail, and it goes totally downhill from there.
You had me at hangnail.
Yeah. So yeah, it just kind of like, you know,
Those are the
just
worst.
rips right down. You know,
Oh,
just like
no.
yeah, it's pretty bad. And then she goes, we call it the corn cob arm.
No.
And then she goes to the feet. Yeah, it's beautiful. I love bruising and pus and vomit. I love making vomit. Generally try and give my actors an option of sweet or savory. I turned one poor girl off of maple syrup for years because of a vomit scene. So yeah, I feel like I'm a little bit twisted on the kind of things that I find exciting, and I think a lot of that has to do with how I grew up.
Yeah.
I saw Michael Jackson's Thriller when the world premiere of Thriller at 6 years old. And I think 6 is actually an age that's really important because I've heard this a lot from some people, like some of the stuff that they see when they're like 6 or 7 years old. I have a nephew that's right in that range, so I'm trying to think of what I can expose him to that might just change his life forever.
Yeah, you gotta carefully plan that out.
Exactly. Because I loved Michael Jackson, but then because of Thriller, I loved Michael Jackson as a zombie. I loved Michael Jackson as a werewolf, and so you kind of
Moonwalker.
yes.
Where he turns into like a transformer.
Oh yeah, and I got to go.
Or the Wiz.
The Wiz, and I saw Brian, the Captain EO, when I was
nice.
my grandmother took me to Disney World. That was my highlight, was getting to see that. So yeah, my dad took me to a Michael Jackson concert shortly after. It was the Thriller tour. I listened to it, that whole album, every night before going to sleep. I actually would throw a fit if my parents didn't let me listen to it. My grandmother thought it was something really bad but I found it very calming and enjoyable to especially listen to Thriller itself.
Here's the Vincent Price breakdown.
Just loved Vincent Price, and a lot of the stuff that was scary comforted me. And I also found a lot of times, like with things like the Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster and the X-Men in the movie I got my name from, Nightbreed. It's all these stories, and you can I can go back and I can look, kind of a more encapsulated view of what turned me into what I am. And a lot of it is these misunderstood monsters. It's like you just don't understand me. I'm an artist. It's just like I just people that are villainized because of the way they look or because of the way that they're different. In Nightbreed, which is the movie I got my name from, the monsters are kind of the good guys, although they do still eat human or innocent's flesh. They're kind of the good guys.
Well, no one's really that innocent.
Right. It's true. And that's one of the great things that I love about Clive Barker and his writing is that there's his good guys are likable and his bad guys are likable and his good guys are flawed. And like we all are. And that there really is no black and white in the world and in art. There's always this gray area. And so in the story, the monsters are persecuted by the humans, played by David Cronenberg.
Only because they ate a couple people.
Right. And they're destroyed for being different because humans just don't understand them.
Right.
And we do. As a human race, we tend to destroy the things that we don't understand or things that are different from us.
What? I know, right?
I said I wasn't going to get political.
I'm saying right here, right now, I am anti-human.
Those poor Neanderthals, man.
Yeah, that's probably what happened to them.
Yeah, so...
Which?
Yeah, I had my name legally changed when I was 15.
Oh, wow.
And my parents let me do it because I was premature and they hadn't really thought about my name. And it was a pretty ordinary name. So they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. I had to go to court, had to have it printed in the paper. But eventually they actually changed my birth certificate so I wouldn't have to go back and get the paperwork every time because I lose paperwork sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
So it's pretty
I mean,
great.
God forbid you ever run for office.
I know, right? But yeah, kind of didn't know that, you know, in the movie, Midian is a safe place for the monsters.
Yeah.
And so now with monster makeup effects, it's also still a safe place for monsters to grow and become things for films.
So do you have any do you have any advice for people who may want to get into like special effects makeup or just in the creative industry in general, or like what are some of the hard lessons that maybe you could help people not learn the hard way?
It's not just all about the art. It's about the hustle. It's about the networking, and it's about being able to take criticism and do what somebody else wants. It's not about you, ever. And that's one thing that, you know, is hard for artists to kind of work around. And then the other thing I would say is avoid YouTube almost at all costs. As far as a learning for special effects specifically.
Oh, really?
If somebody is teaching you how to do something by doing it on themselves, just avoid it. Don't have a can in the eye. Don't have a zipper face. Don't have a finger that's been offset. These are all... It's kind of the new, like, when I was, you know, when I graduated from school, they had a portfolio. You'd have to have this, 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 and this. And they still kind of have it. You have to have a bald cap, and you have to have a character makeup, and you have to do an old age, and you have to do kind of like these things. So effects houses would get basically the same portfolio from, like, everybody. But these days, it's kind of the YouTube learning curriculum. Where you get the same makeups over and over again, and they excite all of your friends. Everybody thinks it's really great. No, you should be on Face Off, and you need to be in the movies. But it's literally just the same stuff regurgitated over and over again. And so if you actually want to get hired by an effects company, doing something that's a little different, that is creative, that is more character-based, because everybody wants to do blood and guts. There's only a limited amount of jobs for that, and everybody wants to make monsters, and there's even less work for that.
Yeah.
So, you know, do some of those things on your own time, and then figure out how to be a beauty makeup artist, how to you know, if you want to actually work and make money at this, you're probably going to have to be diversified. And do a lot of other things as well. But it's almost more important than that is meeting people. And, you know, if I could go back, I probably spent the first 10 years of my career just kind of like focusing on getting smaller jobs and getting better and getting better and getting better. Whereas I could have spent some of those earlier years networking and gotten further along faster. But at this point, I'm at a point where I understand a good portion of the industry. Being a woman, being an artist, these are all kind of things that you have to, that are a little bit harder in a male-dominated industry and a male-dominated sub-industry of an industry. You know, there's a lot of education and experience that I feel like I needed to get prior to that. So I don't regret anything necessarily, but if I were to do something different, I would start doing more networking sooner. And not just in the local area, but nationwide, worldwide. There are people everywhere. And you might have somebody that you met 20 years ago hire you for a job tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
So it's really, everything comes around. Don't burn any bridges. That's another tough one because films tend to get a little bit heated at times, and even like the last film I worked on, or not the last one, couple films ago, my primary assistant and I had to have a few weeks apart after the film because it was so intense, and it was so we were there every day and we were burning ourselves out that you just don't want to see these people anymore. And then you take a moment, you get better, and you can go back, and you just don't ever say anything that you're going to regret. Because at that time, it may seem like the most satisfying thing in the world to just be like, screw you, or whatever. But ultimately, this person could be your friend for years. So. Yeah.
Well, how would you recommend people? What are good places to network in this industry, or specifically for?
Oh Lord, Facebook.
Oh, just straight up.
Straight up Facebook.
Okay.
Man, everybody's on Facebook. Everybody's on Instagram. Those are the two platforms that you really see most people. And then don't be afraid to pick up a phone.
What?
A phone, I know, right?
You mean pick up a phone to
Amish?
play Words with Friends with people, right?
They actually make phone calls. These crazy things. And the crazy thing is that most of the effects companies that exist, besides a few of the really big ones, they're not going to have a secretary that answers the phone.
Right.
You might just get the owner of the company, answer your call, and have something to say. And they might remember you, and they might, The other thing that a lot of these folks do is they have little classes and workshops.
Yeah.
And there's no better place to get somebody's undivided attention than paying a couple $100 to go take a class.
So if you do call up someone, what's a good thing to say? I'm sure it's not just like, hey, how are you doing?
Give me a job, please.
Right,
Yeah.
Exactly. That's actually the one we get the most is, are you hiring? Just straight out of the gate. And it's just like, well, that's another thing that just is kind of a confusing point. There are no real full-time jobs in the industry.
Not really.
Maybe, okay, so just as an example, Weta in New Zealand. They do all the big stuff. And, Lord of the Rings and all those things, right? They have 6 full-time employees.
Right.
They might hire hundreds of contractors at a time, but they've got 6 people that actually work for them all the time. Are you really going to ask them and ask for a job? They're not going to hire you for a job. What you want to do is be able to say, be interesting enough. Ultimately,
Hey, look at that. I'm sorry.
it's nice to talk to people about themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing else that they are more interested in than themselves. So, if you call someplace up and you say, hey, I really loved the work you did on such and such. I had a question about this. I'm doing something similar. I've done such and such and such and such already, and it's not working. I'm wondering if you could give me a little feedback. Because then you show that you've already done a little work, that you're not just asking how to do something, that you've watched something that they've done, you have an interest in them, and that you're looking for their help as an expert.
Yeah.
That seems to, not to say that I've done that technique
What
many
just
times.
happened?
Did you win?
But
I didn't know you could win it. I thought you just
Disney Records.
going.
Where did I go just
you
now?
got Happy Fishman.
Yeah, I was.
What are we doing?
Hooray! You won Tetris.
That was I was listening to most of that, and that is very good advice.
Yeah, I was definitely kind of distracted looking. It got very fast
That's
for
crazy.
a second there. But that's actually really good advice to just call a company and
But it's hard to know what
But
to
that-
say.
yeah.
Because we're always focusing on ourselves, and that's the hard part. So busting through that, trying to find something that you are genuinely interested in.
Do you want to give this another go?
Sure. Yeah. So that's a good way to connect.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because there's no like set career path like for a lot of other things. You kind of just have to go out there and find it. And it does involve a lot of cold calls and a lot of
And a lot of patience.
Yeah.
I mean, the film industry is rough because nobody's really going to take you seriously for years.
right.
And that's really hard as an artist that, might have some skill or, but if you don't have experience, it's like the whole, getting into the union. You can't get in the union unless you have worked in the union. That can be a tough break for a lot of folks. And that's the entertainment industry. It's doing a good job of trying to make it mysterious. But ultimately, you got to work hard. You got to be nice enough, at least, to don't be a jerk. I mean, that's so much of it is just being a good human being, but not too good.
Right. You don't want to get taken advantage of.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely a fine line. So we were talking, to shift it away from industry talk.
Right.
We were talking about some of the games you liked playing as a kid. I think you mentioned Parasite Eve.
Yep.
Which I played that
Too
one.
short. That was the only problem with that one, is I finished it in like 30 hours.
That one,
like, ugh.
honestly, as like a horror, just like as a horror story, that one stuck with me. The story itself is actually really interesting.
I don't know that one. What's
it was
the
a PlayStation. So the game. Do you remember the story of the game?
Yeah, the mitochondrial DNA got like distorted and created these monsters, basically. These hideous monsters, and you've got to go and battle them.
And there's a lot of stuff about like mitochondrial Eve, which is like a real thing, which made it even more fascinating. That like
it was like real science.
Yeah, there's a really cool part where it's in the Natural History Museum, and like all the dinosaur bones, you have to like fight them. Yeah, I was glad you brought that up, because that was one of those ones.
That's a fun one.
Yeah, like you said, like there's certain things that just stick with you, and it was one of those things where it was not really a popular game, but
yeah,
it made an impact.
It was short.
Were there any other? You said you played mostly PlayStation games.
Yeah, Tomb Raider 2. I did a lot of Diablo 2, Masters of Orion 2. That was one of my faves. Like, I'm a big Star Trek fan. In fact,
nice. Have you watched any of the new ones?
Orville and Discovery. I haven't watched them because they're on a platform I don't have.
What'd you think of the JJ movies?
The first one brought me to tears and made me laugh. Way too many, whatchamacallits, lens flares.
Lens flares?
Holy crap. Once you've noticed it, you can't unsee it. And so that is a little distracting, but the latest one, holy crap, the makeup was just phenomenal. I cannot believe it didn't get nominated for Academy Awards, because that stuff was incredible. And I've been reading I have different makeup artists magazines, like there's a prosthetics magazine and there's a makeup artist magazine that are all great, and you get to see stuff that they don't barely even show in a lot of the films, in beautiful full color shots. So that's a really nice thing about that stuff. But I was such a Trekkie that when Next Generation was my big one. In fact, I remember when it first came out, and I was like, "Who's this bald guy?" And
now it's just, "Oh, Captain, my Captain."
Oh man, back when seasons were serious, and you had to wait all summer for the resuming of the season. There was a Borg episode where the captain gets taken as the Borg, if you've watched any of those. Yeah, and they left it hanging. Yeah. And I had to worry about Picard all summer, and it was awful. Like, I could not focus on anything. I could not. That was probably one of the worst summers I've ever had as a kid, because of Captain Picard and the Borg. So, but yeah, I was so into Star Trek that I would record on VHS Next Generation. And one day I missed the star date because I was going to organize them all by star date.
Oh, no.
Oh.
And I had a little breakdown. I had to take a little break from Star Trek. So I felt better after I kind of like gave it up a little bit, because it got a little out of control. But I wish we had a better enlightened society that could leave money behind and just be better to each other and better for society and better for science.
Well, we need the replicator technology. That seems to be the key.
3D printing, man.
That's pretty close to replicators, man.
We're getting there.
Yeah, we are getting there.
Or maybe not.
With our luck, we'll get replicators.
Maybe we'll go back a little bit first.
Yeah, well. With our luck, we'll get replicators, but it's like a subscription service.
Loot boxes. You don't know what you're going to replicate until after you buy the key.
Oh, no. Have you read Ready Player One?
Yes.
I'm so not looking forward to the movie because I know it's not going to be good.
Me too. Me too. I'm in the same boat.
The book was one of the best books I've ever read.
I need to read. It's on my shelf. I'll
I was literally like, "Shut up! Don't talk to me."
Once you
I'm
start
reading
it,
this book.
once you start it, it just you fly through it.
Harry Potter was probably the next one that I couldn't stop talking to you. But
oh man.
But I love to read. I love to.
Any other like big influences like across mediums?
Well, John Carpenter's The Thing. I gotta do a shout out for that because
that one always got me as a kid. That's always
dog
been my...
scene.
Oh jeez.
Is like that was a moment where I was 9, and I had a holiday party with my dad, and they just kind of set me in front of the TV and put on whatever, right? And that came on, and the dog scene literally had me going, it's only a movie. It's only a movie. It's only a movie. How did they do that? How did they do that?
What movie?
John
The
Carpenter's
Thing.
The Thing.
Oh,
I always liked the head spider.
Oh, jeez.
Just
That part.
something else, man. Oh. But and it
You
still
made the
holds up.
fish cry.
I just watched it the other day.
They had
and that's
actually
the
last-
greatest thing about practical effects is if they're done
holds
really
up.
well, they hold up. And that guy was probably one of the best ever made, and he kind of dipped out, which is pretty sad because he did some of the best stuff ever, and then was like, ooh.
They just a couple years ago they had it at the
Plaza?
the Plaza. And seeing that
yes.
on
On
in a
big
movie
screen.
theater, that was cool. And yeah, it does hold up. And
Yeah, when they're when they're trying to shoot the dog and they're way off, that's a little funny. And the old time computer, like that doesn't hold up.
Right,
Everything
obsessed with
else
it.
holds up.
Yeah.
It is terrifying, and those are the most terrifying things to me. Is like being stuck in the middle of nowhere. So like Alien, terrifying, beautiful, terrifying, and The Thing, like isolation, just no hope. So body horror and kind of like isolation, I think are two of my favorite things. I think I was listening to some other folks talk earlier, and it was just like, I'm not a big slasher either. Like, I just don't find that there's enough imagination involved in the stories behind slasher films. It's just a bunch of kids that you don't care about or hate.
Yeah,
and you are literally waiting for them to die, and it's all about how they die. I can kind of get behind a few of the Saw films because, like, some of the traps are really creative. But if that's all you're hoping for, then I'd rather go watch
torture
The
porn.
Cube again, because that's a lot more fun because there's something a little bit more intelligent about some of that. I like to be able to think a little bit and have my horror.
Did you see any of the newer Alien films, either Prometheus or Covenant?
Yep.
I know people like. I actually really liked Covenant. Like, I understand like the gripes about Prometheus, but I still kind of like that one. But like Covenant, I thought actually had some clever stuff going on. Like there was like a whole Cain and Abel dynamic between the two Rubits.
Definitely. It's super religious. I just kind of feel it. It just like it has too much of a message. Instead of just being, and I feel like it takes away. Like if you see the whole creature and it's running around and it's doing all this stupid stuff, it kind of takes away from that slow burn terror.
Well, that little
that you
one
get.
was like the little scampy one, which I know a lot of it was CGI, which was kind of like, meh.
Yeah.
But the little scampy one that like flails its limbs around when it runs, that one like creeped me out, definitely. I don't know.
I just those slow close-ups of this like the alien opening its mouth and it's just drooling, where that the only thing on set is that head at that time. You don't have to see the whole creature for it to be terrifying. And I just some of that beautiful stuff. I'd like to see more trust being put into, and more quality filmmakers being able to utilize practical makeup effects. I think we are seeing a little bit of a resurgence now because a lot of the filmmakers that are coming into their own now grew up in the 80s and grew up with practical effects.
You look back
And
just 10 years and it's obvious, this doesn't hold up at all.
Yeah,
But
like
The Matrix
Yes.
actually holds up pretty good. I think.
Well, there was a lot of practical effects in that one.
But there is, yeah. But they
Yeah.
also did some really crazy, unique stuff.
Well, to me, it's
digital
like
and filmmaking.
it's all about the blend. Like one of the movies that really impressed, like one of the movies that inspired me to get into filmmaking was the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and it's like there's CGI in that movies, but like
the forced perspective and
Yeah.
the the different sizes, all
But
the stuff that you can
a lot
really
of the
do.
cities were like I know Minas Tirith or not Helm's Deep was a model, and then they composited the little CGI guys on there, and like it's about that mix of like knowing like what can you get away practically and how you can mix that with CGI.
Yeah.
Like that's when it like the magic.
And that's part of it too is that you got the digital folks like following around the director and kind of whispering, "Oh no, we should do this," or we can do this better.
Yeah, worm time.
And instead of working together, totally. Instead of working together, there's this fight. And so you have practical guys that don't know how they're going to take it afterwards, and you've got digital guys that don't understand physics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like I think I heard something about like gleaming the cube off a Tyrannosaurus's tail. Read some article about like how just preposterous that is, and like how it takes you way out of anything that takes you out of the story.
Yeah,
shouldn't be there. I mean, even the newest King Arthur movie, that probably would have been a great movie if they just slashed the budget and removed all of the digital characters. Why do we have to have an enormous snake? What is the purpose of that? What is the purpose of a giant elephant? It doesn't serve the story at all.
Yeah.
And so why are they there? And that's ultimately what I feel is most important about any special effects is, does it serve the story? I'm fine with directors that don't want to show. I mean, think about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. One of the most memorable moments of that film, the original, is when he lifts up the girl and puts her on the meat hook. Like, people think they've seen it. Like, you can talk to people, it's because of the sound, it's because of... They cut away. They never show that. But it's still a part of the film. The short film Incubator, where the guy has the thing come out of him, he does a gag with the teeth, and that gets people more than anything else. We don't show it. It's a sound effect. And so there's so much you can do.
It's always worse in here.
Exactly.
Right.
Your mind. You need to have people actually. You need to trust your audience
It's
and
funny,
know
like,
that they're gonna use their imagination and let them use their imagination.
People will probably make fun of me for this, but the movie that creeped me out a lot as a kid was actually Signs.
Oh yeah.
Because, well, one, like monsters, it's like, I'm pretty sure monsters and ghosts and stuff aren't real, but aliens, maybe?
That's right.
Plausible.
But like so much of that movie is like you see like a leg or a hand
Right.
or it's like, you
Well,
know,
the
and
scariest part of that movie was when the birthday party where they're videotaping.
Yeah.
And you just see an alien walk across the screen, and it's terrifying. I've ever seen that in the theater. And
Or
it's,
the sound they make on the rooftop.
Oh, yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
even seen.
that like.
Yeah.
the cornfield scene was the one that got me where you see just the leg turn
Yeah.
because it's
And that's the thing about video games, like horror video games. Like, if you're not listening to it with headphones, you're not experiencing fully. Like, that's, as somebody that doesn't get scared very often, playing just Doom with the headphones was, like, terrifying because, like, you're hearing stuff come up on you. And that's the other aspect, is that no good special effects is any good without good sound. Sound effects and sound scores, I'm always like really super supportive of the sound folks that work on the films that I'm working on or in general, because they can make or break a film. You can have bad special effects, you can have bad acting. If you don't have bad lighting, that would be great, because lighting is pretty important, but you can have bad camera work. I mean, look at all the terrible found footage stuff, but you can keep people's attention throughout all of that if you have good sound.
Actually, a really good non-horror example of that is Trailer Park Boys.
Yeah.
If you ever watched that. Especially the early seasons. It looks like it's on like a camcorder.
Right.
But it's quality sound, and so it's totally watchable.
You can follow it. I've watched some terrible movies on Netflix that I haven't been able to get through because on subjects that I really liked, because the sound quality just wasn't good enough to actually hear or understand, or it was distracting. Sometimes if the scores are too big or too crazy, it can lose you. And so, boy, I'd say good sound, which is primary, Good lighting is secondary, and good. It's between lighting and editing, actually. I don't know what's
editing can
the
definitely
next.
save a movie.
Editing
Yeah.
definitely
I
save
think
a
it was-
movie.
was it
Probably
Star
editing
Wars?
next.
I think it might have been Kubrick or it might have been it was either Kubrick or Ridley Scott. I think it was Kubrick said that like editing is like the most crucial part of a film because it's when you actually. I mean, you could argue
Yeah.
against that or not, but that's when you actually build the film, right? Like,
You can have a really well edited film that sounds like shit.
and you could.
It's not gonna do.
It's true.
That's
So-
I guess. I mean, yeah, you gotta hear it.
Yeah,
You gotta hear it.
Yeah.
I mean, people have always listened to radio plays.
that's right.
Put a little fanani.
Crazy.
This might be a good time to start wrapping it up.
Oh man.
So
Quick
anything
fire.
you
I
wanna
want to
plug?
just
I
say
know.
like some of the other great movies that
Oh, yeah,
if
go
you
for
haven't
it.
like. So some of the films that besides the stuff that I've worked on, you can go on to IMDb and type in Midian Crosby and look at most of the stuff that I've worked on. And I really, Captain Fantastic, Cop Car, Motivational Growth, Eat, In the Frame are probably some of the ones that I recommend that we've worked on. I hope you get to see those. I wouldn't recommend anything that was terrible or a waste of anybody's time. The Frame is a mind bender, so expect a thinking movie if you're going to watch that. That would be the only caveat.
Thinking is hard.
I know, it's so sad.
Brainy hurdy.
But it's also beautiful. So that little caveat there, if you're a mindless movie watcher. As far as films that, if you go back and watch some of the really good ones, it really makes me sad these days when I talk to kids that have never seen The Dark Crystal or Labyrinth or Legend.
Oh, have you been to the Center for Puppetry Arts?
I haven't yet, but a friend of mine went and talked there. She's actually working at Jim Henson's Creature Shop right now. She
Oh,
won the Jim
cool.
Henson Dark Crystal Challenge, and she's working on the new film, and so or the new show. And so I'm super excited, super supportive. I love puppets.
They have they have a really good
I
selection
can't
right
wait
there.
to go. It's on my top list of things to do. They have a couple events coming up that I'm really excited about. I was just out of town and just crazy. Need to make time for that for sure.
It's worth it. It's
Totally.
definitely worth it. Just the museum
Yeah.
itself.
Oh.
Like, they do actually. In May, I don't know why I'm plugging them, but in May they do this thing called the Experimental Puppetry Theater, where it's half live performances and a half stage performance, or half
Yeah.
stage performances, half filmed things.
I think there's one of those that I want to see that looks really interesting. But yeah, they don't have as much puppets as they used to. And that's probably, Henson is one of those huge influences for my life and career. If I had been better at animatronics or puppet making in general, I probably would have gone into that. That was one of my goals when I went to school. But let's see, what else? Definitely check out Nightbreed. Check out John Carpenter's The Thing and Alien, the original Alien and Aliens. Those are just beautiful films that can't be beat today at all. And Clash of the Titans was also a really big one for me. So stop motion animation, I love that stuff. Highly, keep that one alive. Puppets and stop motion animation forever. The Brothers Quay, that's some really good, weird stop motion animation. John Spankmeyer, he does a really weird Alice in Wonderland that totally twisted my mind when I was 12.
Oh, wow,
So,
okay.
another film that really disturbed me as a kid was Andy Warhol's Dracula. So you never know.
I didn't know he did a Dracula.
Yeah, me either.
Was
really
it just 14 hours of a guy dressed like Dracula?
No, it was like it was Udo Kier playing a vampire that if he didn't get actual virgins, he would vomit and get really, really sick. And so puking blood in the bathtub, that's one of my earliest memories.
Me too,
a
but for
young
different
child.
reasons.
And yeah, him the farm boy trying to de-virginize the farm girls prior to his getting them. Yeah, good stuff. My mom let
I'll
me
have
watch
to check
anything. I
that.
got HBO in my room when I was like 12. It was terrible.
nice.
It's all
Yeah.
it all makes sense now.
Yeah, and I had an older brother. It was 19 years older than me. That showed me
Oh, wow.
Fangoria magazine. Showed me how they did stuff. Worked at a mask making company. So cherish the people that influence your life because they will change your direction.
Do you have anything you want to plug before we sign off?
Check out monstermakeupeffects.com. Keep an eye out for a couple of upcoming films. Actually, we just, let's see, Come to Me, Sister Mary is a short film that is really cool, and it's hitting the film circuit now. Apartment 121, worked on that one. It has Kyle Gass from Tenacious D.
Oh, cool.
And a couple other really amazing actors in that. Hoax, which if you like Bigfoot, you will love Hoax. It's another kind of thinking person's horror film, really well written, beautiful film. And Bodies, which is high on the rape content, but really good on the special effects. What can I say?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's just a few things that are coming out now that we've worked on, and we have more stuff in the works. So check out monstermakeupeffects.com, at Monster Midian on Instagram and Facebook and all those things.
Cool.
Thanks.
Before we go, I want to plug Thea. We partner with Thea, the new video network and creative community. You'll find Terminus live at thea.network every Wednesday after the live stream. So check us out there if you're watching us live, and watch it again the next day. Also, I want to talk about Terminus. The dates for Terminus are June 15th to the 17th. Submissions for games and films are open right now. Badges are on sale. Visit terminusevent.com for details.
Just to expand on that, our badge prices go up on the 1st, and then
2 days.
So you've got 2 days, and then our
They're cheap now. Get them now.
Our submission prices also go up on Saturday. So
send those movies.
The
Finish
early-
making them and then send them by Saturday.
The early bird gets the Terminus. I also wanted to do a special thank you to our director, Jess.
Jess.
Who is
Jess Reynoso.
moving on. She's going on a 3-hour tour, I think, somewhere.
She just accepted a job for girlgaze.tv. It's an incredible company working on Gen Z girls ages 13 to 19, getting them behind the camera. So Jess is going to go on to do amazing things, and we're sad to lose her, but excited to see what amazing things she'll do with that company.
So thank you, Jess, for all of the amazing work that you've done for us and helping us do our stream and run the conference and all that stuff.
Oh no!
Thank you.
Okay, I was gonna say a rare Melissa appearance.
Aww.
Just her hands. Just her hands.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you, Jess.
Well, all right, and I think that's.
Thanks for being on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you
It was
for having
very
me.
fascinating.
It's great.
That's a Tuesday, everybody.
Bye.
Have fun gaming.